Day two of the Senior Bowl wrapped up on Wednesday, and we'll tell you some players that the Cowboys have their eyes on next.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us the #1 sports podcast network. Today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Download the Prize Picks app today and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Welcome back. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. He is Landon McCool. And on today's show, we're going to talk about all of the happenings in Mobile, Alabama for the Senior Bowl. We're going to talk about some coaching updates that could be happening on the defensive side of the ball. But I want to start with some of the winners from day two of practice. And again, as Landon and I mentioned earlier in the week, what you want to see is the drumbeat here of guys that are continuing to put together strong performances day after day. And I want to start with a guy that we mentioned yesterday, TJ Parker, who showed off a lot of power. He was winning one-on-one drills. He was winning in the team drills. I think there was some maybe concern about his lack of production in 2025. But Landon, it certainly feels like he's a guy that could be right back in the round one discussion after a strong Senior Bowl.
It feels like we've seen this kind of archetype before, where a guy had a good but not great junior year, right? Or no, I'm sorry, had a great junior year and then had like a good but not as good as you expected senior year, and then shows up in the Senior Bowl and it's like the junior player showed back up, right? Like it's almost like, oh, senior's over. I'm back to who I was. And I think that's almost kind of what we've gotten out of Parker, right? It's like immediately he looks like the guy that, you know, we saw in the 24 tape, not the 25 tape. And he's going out here and he's dominating tackles. And I thought you saw him like winning a little bit more than a little bit differently than you were at different times. Yesterday, I thought he was using his hands in a little bit more varied way, especially in the team stuff. But you know, I think again, we're seeing these guys that really are benefiting from coming into a year after like having a down year, coming into the Senior Bowl and really kind of showing out and getting an opportunity to kind of show themselves. I think the other guy to me that really kind of showed out that way, even though a different position, is Jay Knott. I mean, this is a guy that, you know, there was huge expectations for him coming into this year because what we had seen from him at Oklahoma previously. He mysteriously isn't playing very much at Oklahoma. I thought he's come out here and showed you a lot of really good stuff, not only in the running and the pass game, but also in pass protection. He had a really good pass rep on one of these one-on-one reps where he was able to hold his own in a compete period. So yeah, just it's interesting to see these kind of guys that you know are using the Senior Bowl almost kind of as a redemption arc. And then can I mention two more guys real quick, just since we're talking about drumbeat guys? More from Michigan, I thought again had another really good day. Yeah, it was, and just kind of, you know, he's a powerful player and he shows you power, but he can also do a little bit of the quickness game and beat you around the edge. He's not elite in that area at all, but I think he can do a little bit of everything, which I think is going to make him really valuable. He seems like a, you know, late first round, high second round guy to me.
Probably.
And then Gabe Yakis, I think, from Illinois, just again goes out there and just dominates guys. I heard them on the broadcast too talk about the fact that his position coach thought that he could maybe even put on another 10 pounds, I think, or 20 pounds from, like, because he was at 270 during the season. I think the comment was made he could have made 10 more pounds from there, which would put him at 280. In these practices, he's playing at around 260. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, I heard that he's hitting speeds of like, I think it was 18 miles an hour or something like that. So he is explosive, strong, and he just uses it all very well. Both Moore and Akis, I think is how you say his name, even though there's a J, from Illinois. Both of these are guys I'm putting on drumbeat watch.
A couple more for me. Chris Johnson, a cornerback from San
Yes, a
Diego
guy.
State. I mean,
Yeah.
it's unbelievable in one-on-one drills. There was one play where I think it was
The
Montgomery.
downfield one?
Yeah, kind of
Where he
mossed him a little bit, right?
well, I wouldn't say that because Johnson was in position at least. That was just a ridiculous
And
play by Montgomery.
yeah, and I think that's kind of the point. Like, even on the plays that he loses, he's losing because of other players making
Fair.
spectacular
Yeah.
catches, right? Like, if a guy's going to lose, that's how I want them to lose. There were a couple times where he beat the wide receiver to the spot on these one-on-one stuff. Like, this is somebody that probably a day 2 pick with a ton of production. And again, I know the Cowboys don't have a day 2 pick right now. I mean, they're going to end up with one.
Yeah.
He's the guy that if they don't draft a cornerback in round 1, then I could absolutely see them targeting on day 2.
Yeah, he's a great example of why you don't just tally wins and losses in these one-on-one situations. It's about like how he's playing in the rep, and he is mirroring, and he's very smooth, and he's competitive in almost every single one of his reps, which to me, like, that's more important than did the guy make the catch at the end. Like, I think those, obviously that's a part of the evaluation, but just as much of the evaluation in these one-on-one reps is was he sticky? Was he in phase with the guy throughout the rep? Because if he's in phase and then like some guy just makes an incredible catch or something like happens, I'm giving him some credit, because to me, I saw a solid rep that in some situations of quarterbacks looking over there, he's going to view him as covered and go elsewhere. So
one more guy that I wanted to mention here, and actually we have not talked about this guy yet, and that's Jacob Rodriguez, the linebacker from Texas Tech. I was watching a YouTube video of our guy Mike Fisher talking about a mock draft where the Cowboys traded down from 12 to 21 and picked up Nick Herbig. Very good.
Where'd they get that idea from?
I don't know.
That's incredible.
It's really funny. That's why I was watching the video.
Really smart idea.
Yeah, thank you. And Fisher mentioned that the Cowboys don't like the size of Rodriguez. He's 6'1", 233 pounds. They don't like the lack of athleticism, but they love the player. And I thought that was really interesting, that they really, really like Rodriguez. Now, where do you take Rodriguez? I don't know. It's me. Question. He's probably a day 2 pick, right? Probably more like I think a second, third round linebacker. But I thought he was awesome today. He had an interception in team drills. He forced a fumble in the team session. Well. Yeah. He was coming downhill in the pass protecting stuff and just blowing up the running backs. Just a really, really fun player.
Yeah, I mean, he's a guy that I think all these coaches are going to be banging the table for, because look, the production's there. You see it on tape. Like, he makes plays. He gets to where he's supposed to be very quickly. He's decisive. He knows what he wants to do, and obviously, the production is elite. The guy is, like, they called him the trophy case. I think he was the first linebacker nominated for the Beardnick, the best linebacker award, and the Heisman, I think. So, or was he a Heisman finalist?
Yeah, he finished 5th in Heisman. Yeah,
that's right. So yeah, just a guy that like has that kind of, I'll name it, that kind of Sean Lee factor to his, like, what's between his ears. He doesn't have Sean Lee's athleticism, right? And that's what made Sean Lee in a lot of ways. And I'm not saying that he can't be a very, very good NFL player. I think the question is, like, can he pull? It's always going to be, can he pull off what he did in college at the speed that the NFL is at? Because it's a big step up, and that gap in athleticism may be the difference, right?
I guess I just look at like the playoffs, and you've got guys like Robert Spillane, who's a starting linebacker for the New England Patriots. Matt Milano, who's in his 30s, who can't move anymore, a starting linebacker.
That's right.
Even in the NFC, the 49ers were playing guys like Eric Kendricks, who was, way past his prime. Luke Gifford was one of their linebackers they were playing. That's because if you know where you're supposed to be and you can make tackles, you're going to play a long time in the NFL. And I think if the Cowboys, and if you're looking at, okay, maybe Rodriguez is our middle linebacker and we put Overshown back at weak side linebacker, you've got Leafau and James. It's not an A++ group, but I think you can win with that unit.
And I, if I was in that scouting room, I would counter to Will McClay or to the Joneses, anyone pushing back on it, I would say, Do you think that Sean Lee was still running that 4.4 or 4.5 or what he was clocked at after 3 ACL tears or whatever it was at the end of his career when he was playing his best football? No, he wasn't. He was a lot slower, probably closer to where we were talking about Jacob Rodriguez being right now. And I think that's probably a closer comparison to what you're going to get. Maybe he's a little bit slow in straight line, but he's so quick in the processor that he's making up that gap early in the snap with his intelligence.
Let's talk about two players who could drastically change the draft plans for the Dallas Cowboys that they might have absolutely no interest in drafting. I know that sounds weird. I'll explain next. This episode is brought to you by Rocket Money. Let's be real. Managing your finances can feel overwhelming between subscriptions that you forgot about, bills that keep going up, and trying to figure out where all of your money actually goes each month can be incredibly stressful. And who has the time to track down every transaction or hunt down hidden fees? That is where Rocket Money comes in, the personal finance app that helps you take control. It helps you find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps you lower your bills so that you can actually grow your savings. We just started using Rocket Money a couple months ago, and I was shocked to see how much money we were just throwing away every single month on subscriptions that we didn't even know that we had. But Rocket Money helped us track them down and get rid of them very, very easily. Let Rocket Money help you reach your financial goals faster. Join rocketmoney.com/lockedon. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. rocketmoney.com/lockedon. This episode is brought to you by TurboTax. Tax season doesn't have to take over your life. This year, TurboTax is making it easier than ever to just hand things off and move on with your day. With TurboTax full service, you can have your taxes done for you by a trusted local expert, start to finish, without any of the stress or guesswork. Instead of spending hours trying to fill out forms, you can meet with a local TurboTax expert in person or connect online, and they're going to handle everything. It's a huge time saver, and it gives you real peace of mind knowing that an expert is handling it all. And for a limited time, you can have your taxes done by a local TurboTax expert for just $150 all in. And if a TurboTax expert did file for you, you are eligible for this. So just file by February 28th. Take taxes off your plate and get back to your life. Visit turbotax.com/local to book your appointment today. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen every single day. If you haven't done so already, check out the Everydayer Club, ad-free episodes of the Locked On Cowboys podcast, plus so much more. Visit lockedoncowboys.supercast.com or check out the link in the show notes. All right, before I explain what I'm talking about with Caleb Banks and my guy Duncan from Iowa, tell me about Banks. Why he was this guy that was really highly projected going into the 2025 season. What happened?
Yeah, injuries, it feels like, right? And just Florida's season kind of just falling out from underneath him. And I think, it's injuries specifically, but coming in, like you look at the body of work and just the body, right, of Caleb Banks, and you figure that's a top 10, top 5, pick in a lot of drafts because of the production, because of the position, and the kind of planet theory aspect of the fact that there are only so many people on the planet that are as big as a planet, and he is one of them, and he's absolutely athletic enough to use the body appropriately. So I think the injuries obviously took him out for portions of the season, and then even when he came back, he wasn't quite the same. So I think what you're seeing is a guy that's kind of, again, on the TJ Parker kind of, Senior Bowl redemption tour, and you're seeing a guy whose talent didn't quite get to shine out throughout the season. Maybe he's finally healthy. Maybe he's finally ready to perform in the way that we all expected him to.
And we like Parker, but the upside here is just so much higher for Caleb Banks. And the NFL is not going to let a 6'6", 330-pound guy that moves like this fall very far to the draft. We saw someone like Walter Nolan last year.
Yeah,
He was
exactly.
way smaller, who had one day at the Senior Bowl, bounced around at a bunch of different schools, ended up going inside the top 16, I think what it was. And the Cowboys actually considered him at 12 because there's just not that many guys that move like that. He's going to be a really important player for the Cowboys because they're not drafting a defensive tackle inside the top 20.
That's right.
But if he goes inside the top 10, that probably means that one of these guys that you might love, like Arvell Reese or Reuben Bain or Sonny Styles or Caleb Downs, gets to you at 12. So root for Caleb Banks to crush the draft process like he is right now. And I wouldn't be surprised if he goes very, very early in this draft.
Yeah, I mean, just simply because, look, it's very similar to how we should all be rooting for every single quarterback to have an incredible draft process, right? Like, we want all the quarterbacks to come out in the draft. We want them to be incredible. We want them to look great. We want them to get drafted very highly. It would be great if 11 quarterbacks came out and got drafted this year.
It's not happening, but
yeah,
there might be two.
My point being, like, any position where the Cowboys aren't going to be drafting, every single time they get drafted above the Cowboys, it's a win. Bingo. You're pushing down a player that the Cowboys want to put them inside the reach of the Cowboys' waiting arms. So, yeah, absolutely. And Caleb Banks is one of those guys where you don't have to squint, right? Like, this is not a great year at the top of this draft. And if Caleb Banks comes in and just continues to dominate this process the way he does, he has all the other parts to him. Right? Like, he has had production in the SEC. He has been he has the physical attributes of a top 10, top 5 defensive lineman. So if all it takes is a really positive process, and he could easily be thrust into the top 10 in a way that maybe, half a dozen other players couldn't, because he looks the part, and he could be convinced. He could easily be convinced a GM that this is a first round top 10 defensive tackle type.
And I'm really looking at like the Chiefs and the Bengals, who pick like right above Dallas. And to me, he seems like the perfect Bengals pick. Like, they love drafting traits. And I get it. And this guy has a lot of traits at a position that's really hard to find. Keep an eye on him throughout the rest of the Senior Bowl, throughout the draft process, because I do think he's going to be a big part of the Cowboys draft plans, just not for their specific team. The other one is a guy that we talked about on yesterday's show, and that is our guy Gennings Dunker from Iowa. And you and I were kind of joking yesterday that I thought this was going to be a guy that goes in the first round in top 20. Well, there was somebody that is part of the draft community that saw that and said, I think he goes top 15. Now, I, as a huge Gennings Dunker fan, think that's a little rich, but it's the same thing, right? We don't think the Cowboys are going to take a tackle/guard in round 1. But if another one goes in that range between 12 and 20, that's awesome for us.
I'm assuming that we're not talking about the same person, but I actually saw somebody else who said that they thought that he could be a top 20 draft pick. So, I mean, it's yeah. I mean, like, listen, hey guys, let's get that out there, right? Like, again, another guy that the Cowboys aren't likely to get, who, like Marcus is implying, could be great for the Cowboys by pushing down more talent that they want. Tackles, wide receivers probably, although there's a decent enough class of that, I don't think you're going to get surprises here. But I think tackles, defensive linemen specifically, where there's a planet theory aspect of it too, that if you could show them enough positive things in these all-star games, please give me, like, GMs are like, please give me an excuse to draft you, right? Give me an excuse to draft, to put some positive tape out there for me to hold on. I love to draft traits. There are teams out there that are going to look at some of these guys. Gennings Dunker is less of a traits player, I would say, at least physical traits. You're looking for more like, mentality traits with him. But I think any of these, because he plays tackle, I think he qualifies certainly, or he plays offensive line in general, he qualifies certainly as a guy that could end up being drafted above one of your picks and help push down the guys that you like.
And I saw him talking after the practice. I think it was actually yesterday, where he was saying that a couple of teams asked him to play center, and he took some reps after practice, snapping the ball, and they loved it. It's a little bit like Graham Barton. Now, I think I like Graham Barton, the prospect, a little bit more, but it was the same thing where Barton was a tackle at Duke, played all over, ended up being a center for Tampa Bay, but they got into a situation this year where their offensive line injuries hit and he slid out the left tackle. There's teams that really value that. They also value the tenacity and physicality. And every time I look at like the teams between 12 and 20, I keep thinking, oh, Dan Campbell's going to love this guy.
Yeah,
like, Detroit needs offensive line help. This is 100% a Detroit Lions pick.
Yeah, Tamu Graham Barton, I think is a pretty appropriate comparison. Yeah, again, like I think it's there's two different choices traits to go after depending on the position, right? There's physical attributes that we're talking about with Carl Banks, and that's not Caleb Banks. That's not to say that he isn't doesn't have the same kind of attitude, but I think what specifically you see in his play with Dunker is a guy that, guys, like you said, hard-nosed football types that are looking to build a culture of physicality. They're going to look to Gunnar Dunkins and Gennings Dunker, which is
I already messed up the names.
How do you not mess up that name, for God's sake?
I said Dante Mort's Derek Moore from Michigan, so we both messed up already.
So guys, yeah, we're doing our best with the name. Sorry, but again, how do you mess up Gennings Dunker? I think he's an attributes guy, but just not the kind of attributes that we're normally talking about. He's almost like Tyler Booker, except maybe not quite the physical attributes that you're looking for.
I'm just gonna call him Dunk. I'm watching the new Game of Thrones show, and it's called one of the guys in there is called Dunk. So there you go. All right, let's talk about some coaching moves that the Cowboys could be making later this week. We'll get to that next. This episode is brought to you by Indeed. If you've ever hired someone who looked good on paper but wasn't the right fit, you know how important that is. When you want candidates who truly match what you're looking for, trust Indeed sponsored jobs. Hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other sites. Indeed's sponsored jobs puts your post at the top of the page and helps you reach the right candidates faster. If I ever needed to hire someone for this show, I'd go straight to Indeed and be very specific about what I needed, real experience and not just some resume buzzwords. Spend more time interviewing candidates who check all of your boxes with less stress, less time, and more results using Indeed sponsored jobs. And listeners of this show get a $75 sponsored job credit to help give your job the premium placement it deserves at Indeed.com/lockedon. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support the show by saying that you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring, do it the right way with Indeed. This episode is brought to you by Game Time. There's nothing like being in an NBA arena, the crowd, the energy, the moment. But getting tickets, though, that's the part that always hasn't been so simple. But that's why Game Time has become the go-to app for scoring tickets fast without all of the hassle. It puts the advantage back where it belongs with the fans. I was looking up tickets for this Cavaliers-Laker game that actually happened on Wednesday night because LeBron coming back home to Cleveland. And I found some fantastic deals on the Game Time app. You're able to see the seats from the app before you buy, so you know exactly what your view is going to look like. Take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use promo code Locked On for $20 off your first purchase. That's promo code Locked On for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. And remember, it's gametime.co, not .com. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen every single day. We got some more news about the Cowboys coaching staff. According to Nick Harris at the Fort Worth Star-Telegram, Zach Orr, who interviewed for the defensive coordinator job, is interviewing for a different job on this roster. We weren't thrilled about the idea of Orr as a defensive coordinator. However, we are thrilled about this.
Yeah, I mean, this is appropriate. Like, and we talked. I think we even talked about this when we were doing our coverage of Zach Orr, is that we would have loved to seen him paired with one of these other candidates. I think it was was it Gannon? Was one of the other guys that we were talking about. We even suggested, I think, that we pair him as and I think, that's something that is, it feels like a more appropriate role for him. Now, obviously, he's kind of out of a job because of all the change at the Ravens organization. But I think that the job that he did as a linebacker coach and kind of learning underneath obviously a series of really great defensive minds, I'm super interested in having him come in as a defensive coordinator. And again, like, you have to think about the long term here a little bit. What happens if Parker is so good that we lose him in next year, right, to a head coaching job? Having another young defensive coordinator who could potentially come in and learn under Parker a little bit and then maybe grow a little bit, because Orr is also still very young, I think would be a beneficial thing for the Cowboys as well, because maybe it makes a transition a little bit easier, and you're not having to move back to an old paradigm of kind of older retread defensive coordinator coaches.
Yeah, and just talking to some of our colleagues here and some other Ravens insiders, they really like Orr. They think he's incredibly smart. They think he's going to be a really, really good coach down the line. It's just that he got put into a bad situation in Baltimore, trying to replace Mike McDonald, running his defense, and it kind of progressively got worse. He's only 33. Like, that was so he got the job at 31 years old when he probably wasn't ready for it. That happens to a lot of coaches in the NFL, and they take some time to develop, and then they get back and they're much better the second time around. Wouldn't be surprised if that's the case with Orr. Again, thought it was maybe a little bit of a reach to have him be the defensive coordinator here, but if you can get him on the staff as a run game coordinator or a linebacker coach, sign me up.
Yeah, and he had only ever been in Baltimore, and he had only ever been a linebacker coach at that point. So it was a big swing for the Ravens to make him the defense coordinator. I think that they were trying to go young and be smart. I think it was just that the problem was, again, like you mentioned, having him run McDonald's defense was a difficult ask for him. So I'm interested to see what he could do here.
Yeah, the Cowboys are also interviewing some other candidates that'll be released over the rest of the week. As Christian Parker tries to fill out the staff, they're taking a look at a Cardinals cornerback coach for the same role in Dallas. So again, we'll get a more finalized look at this Cowboys defensive coaching staff probably by Friday or Saturday, and we'll make sure you guys we fill you guys in. That is it for today's show. We'd like to thank you for making Locked On Cowboys your first listen every single day. If you never miss an episode, the Everydayer Club is built for you. Get Locked On Cowboys ad-free, plus members-only Discord access, and so much more. Head over to lockedoncowboys.supercast.com to join the club. And for those of you on video, we can send you the first ever 24/7 national NBA YouTube channel. And on audio, make your second listen to Locked On NFL podcast. Follow Landon on Twitter at McCoolBCB. I'm at Marcus_Mosher, and we'll see you right back here tomorrow.